to a star, sail across the brilliant sky. I wanna be a firefly so small, so bright. So I'm not stopping yet. It feels too good to fly. I'm not ready to rest, and I love you best. Racing at the speed of light, I wanna fight the good fight. Feels like I'm floating, truth is I'm falling away. The world is crying and I'm sad, so I'm not stopping yet. It feels too good to fly. I'm racing on and I love you still.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our 3rd annual Where Music Leads conference. My name is Dr. Cindy Thong, and I'm one of the co-founders of this event alongside my incredibly inspiring colleagues, Dr. Amy Hillis and Lara Deutsch. Welcome back if you've attended a previous session or even last year's event, and hello and welcome if this is your first session of this conference. So Where Music Leads is an organization that seeks to provide resources for musicians exploring diverse career pathways, both highlighting and normalizing a broad range of career options, as well as the extensive skills that are involved in developing a sustainable career. So we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and also a huge thank you to our collaborative partner, NYO Canada, as well as our supporter, the RBC Foundation, and sponsor Long and McQuaid. So before we start today's discussion, just a few housekeeping items for the audience. There is a chat available, so please say hi, tell us where you're from, and do share your thoughts and ideas whenever maybe a panelist says something that resonates with you. And for those questions that you may have or pop into mind during the session, there is a dedicated Q&A box that can be found along the Zoom menu. And you can enter your questions there. Please note that you can also submit these anonymously, so you don't have to feel the pressure as if your name will be up there. So please, we're always super happy to answer these questions, and we'll spend the last 15 to 20 minutes of each session answering these. So please, I love seeing a flooded Q&A box. More information about our remaining conference can be found on our website, www.wheremusicleads.com. So today's session is titled, It Didn't Go According to Plan, When Detours Become the Destination. So as we can imagine, whether we are a prospective student, current student, educator, even in any profession, careers don't always unfold exactly as planned. And sometimes because of that, we can feel a sense of uncertainty in many degrees. So this session might prompt that question whether there's a single right path within a music degree, let's say in this sense, or any endeavor we embark on. So today you'll hear firsthand from musicians who have turned unexpected detours into defining moments and whose careers have evolved beyond traditional expectations. These stories celebrate both curiosity, adaptability, and the courage to say yes to what comes next, which isn't always easy, and highlights how openness and resilience can turn uncertainty into opportunity. So I'm really excited to introduce the first of our panel members, Sarah Frank, who is a very accomplished violinist who plays in various folk, improvised, and classical settings. She's currently based in Halifax, and Sarah is a founding member of the bluegrass songwriter duo, the Bombadils, who have won Vocal Group of the Year at the 2024 Canadian Folk Music Awards, Rising Star Recording of the Year at the 2024 East Coast Music, and Americana Bluegrass Recording of the Year at 2023 Music Nova Scotia Awards. Montreal Gazette writes, Sarah Frank's fiddle and vocal harmonies add some stratospheric beauty. What a wonderful way to describe that. But beyond these endeavors, past work have also included world premieres of contemporary opera Escape to Freedom by Sandy Moore, as well as performances with Upstreet Music Association, and work with the new music ensemble, Alkali Collective, and also working in her spare time, of course, with Symphony Nova Scotia as a sub. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on this topic. Our next guest is Peter Eratostene, who is a classically trained double bassist holding a master's degree from the University of Toronto, where he studied with Tony Flint. He's spent many years gigging on electric bass in the Toronto scene. Peter has also arranged for large and small ensembles, big bands, septets, trios, both in jazz, classical, and various settings. Um, Peter is currently the orchestral librarian of the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra, a position which he adopted, I believe, in 2024. And prior to this time, he was the librarian for the National Ballet of Canada and the Toronto Mendelssohn Choir. Um, it's also been a library fellow at Tanglewood Music Festival and also at Sarasota Music Festival. So thank you for joining us, Peter. Really excited to hear more about this career and polyvalence. Last but not least, our last guest is New York-based music director and pianist John Yoon. John is currently the music director for the six-time Tony Award-winning Broadway production Maybe Happy Ending, which won Best Musical this past edition of the Tony Awards. He was most recently also the associate music director for a Broadway production of Hell's Kitchen, the Alicia Keys musical, and the Tina Turner musical, amongst others, which he's had the pleasure to lead. He works in a variety of wide range of musical styles, frequently engaged for many productions, concerts, masterclasses, collaborative projects, vocal coaching, amongst many others. He is conducted for the Leonard Bernstein Foundation with a new 20-piece orchestra rework and has played keyboard for Disney's Zombies 3 music video with Meg McDonnell and Milo Manheim. He's also performed on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and has also performed at the 74th Tony Awards. John has performed in over 20 countries and is a self-proclaimed coffee nerd and on a possibly forever hiatus, possibly forever extended doctoral candidate in piano performance hiatus from Western University. So thank you for joining us, John. Really excited to have you. So I guess my first question to kind of open this would be if how you might describe what you do. Um, just tell us a little bit of how you have perceived your own career path and how you moved towards doing what you do today. Maybe Sarah, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. Really looking forward to being part of this. You gave a pretty good introduction, I think, but how I perceive what I do, I guess it's kind of feels like it's often changing. But at the heart of it is, yeah, that main songwriter project, writing songs, but also kind of the influence of various folk styles stays strong. So I'm often still learning fiddle tunes from Irish, bluegrass, American old time, which is kind of like typical, I guess, of a lot of contemporary fiddle players that we're not so like regional about our folk influences. And yeah, but it feels like a big question somehow. And I think often I sense that people don't necessarily know what I'm doing in a day. um, and like I do teach students. I've got about 8 or maybe 10 now violin students. Kind of fluctuates. People come and go.
Mhm.
And I think that's the easiest thing for people to understand. It's like, okay, you teach violin lessons. Um, and I think a lot of people have this picture of me sort of like not doing anything until 3 o'clock and then teaching. And I'm like, I wish I felt that way because it's very busy. So that as part of how I perceive things is feeling always a little too busy and kind of wanting to dial it back. So we could probably dig into that more. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know if there's anything specifically you want me to dig into.
Yeah, I'm wondering if before we jump to the others, if you might elaborate on what, I guess, what was life like before the forming of the Bombadils? Like as a student, like when did you start violin? And
Oh, okay.
was bluegrass, and was that something always something you enjoyed
Oh,
playing
yeah.
or
Yeah, I see.
yeah.
I started violin when I was 4, Suzuki violin. Um, and I just thought of myself as a classical musician until my teenage years. Although looking back, I can see that my dad's sort of front porch guitar singing and pulling me into jam with him was like,
Mm,
it was part of who I was becoming. But then also growing up in the 90s, it was like Natalie McMaster and
mm,
Great Big Sea and some of these like East Coast bands were having commercial success and they were really big even where I grew up, which is Edmonton, Alberta.
mm,
So we don't like think of Edmonton quite so romantically as a fiddle place, but it was still there. I think maybe just because that's already playing the instrument.
mhm,
Um, and so first I got into more like Scottish and Irish styles. And it's just really like who I was around. I
mm,
loved sort of this kind of like social community music, dance-based music. Um, and there's, quite an Irish diaspora, Irish pubs around the world. So that was all, anywhere I've lived, there's been like
mhm,
the opportunity to get into Irish music. And in terms of Scottish, I just happened to know a bagpiper in Alberta. Like it was just
mhm,
so it's kind of just who I've met. And then same thing when I moved to Montreal to go to school, I went to McGill. I ended up there's still Irish music there, French Canadian fiddle, of course. And around that time is when I started to get into bluegrass because I think what piqued my interest about it was one, the improvisation element of it. Maybe partly just being influenced by the jazz program at McGill. Like I didn't actually
mhm,
realize that that was, I mean, I think I knew there was a jazz program, but I didn't know how much that would affect me. Um, I was in the classical program, but
mhm,
just having those musicians there and electives available even influenced me. So I was interested in the improvisational element of bluegrass, and also bluegrass is very, it's really in terms of folk styles gone from kind of like a traditional sort of you might say straight ahead way, but it's really kind of constantly evolving, like of
mhm.
different sort of acoustic string band styles. It it's really still bringing in elements of pop and jazz,
Yeah.
rock, like kind of contemporary various
Mhm.
styles, which is I find very interesting about it. And some people will say that's not bluegrass anymore, but I don't know.
What is music?
Yeah. uh, so yeah, let me know if I'm losing train of thought because I
Oh
honestly I'm still
no.
feeling. I'll let people know I had the flu yesterday, and I'm realizing now I'm like I'm still tired. So you let me
No,
know if
we're
it's not making
so
sense.
grateful for your presence here. No, I think just to contextualize it for the audience, that's such a great starting point. And we'll probably circle back to a few of those items.
Sure.
Um, but I think what we were saying also, just the environment can be so important sometimes.
Hmm.
I mean, I think we were maybe at McGill at the same time, but just how
Oh.
siloed programs or different disciplines within music or anything really can feel sometimes, but how complementary or interdisciplinary everything can or often is. So I think
Mhm.
that was it's really interesting to see how that has shaped a certain foundation, maybe one could say. But
Hmm.
no, we'll circle back for sure. So many things I want to kind of pick your brain about.
Sure.
How about you, Peter? What's your background getting into as a double bassist in Toronto and where you are today?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess yeah, my background, I started playing electric bass in grade 9, and then got into double bass in grade 12. And then my teacher encouraged me to apply, Mr. Maroney, shout out. He encouraged me to apply York University. Um, so yeah, I applied for the jazz program there, but it's a very open, speaking of siloed things, I would say it's very open. Like I was
Mhm.
able to, I joined the orchestra at York when I was in my third year.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of, I wanted to get my bow chops together so I could start playing in musicals and things like that. Um, yeah, I joined like the Baroque ensemble. I was trying to I was just trying to talk to all the different professors and the composition professors and trying to get as much knowledge as I could. And I quickly realized when I started talking to my other colleagues at other schools that they didn't have the same experience. Their programs are much more laid out for them at these, like, again, like I love U of T and I didn't do my undergrad there, so I don't know if this is totally true, but it seemed much more laid out of these are the courses you have to do. And jazz bassists can't just join the orchestra and things like that. Um, yeah, and kind of same with like Humber, it's very, you kind of start getting put into tracks at a certain point. Yeah, so when I was at York and also at U of T and GGS, like I didn't really realize my friends were pointing this to me later, but I would spend a lot of my time at the libraries. So I'd take out a lot of scores and records and talk to the librarians. Quickly became my favorite place at school. Yeah. So that kind of was in the back of my head. I did not realize that. But yeah, I started playing a bunch, gigging. Yeah, joined the Toronto All-Star Big Band, started like joining larger ensembles like that. And yeah, I arranged a piece and I also wrote a piece for the Toronto All-Star Big Band, which we performed, which is like a 1940s-ish kind of swing band. Yeah, it really, yeah, I just started getting really interested in large ensembles and sheet music and like, how does this all work and who organizes this? But yeah, I didn't realize it was a career still at that point. Yeah, and I got basically I thought it would be a performing bassist. That was kind of my like when I was 30, I'd be, playing Mervish, going on these big like Broadway tours, maybe I don't know, playing for Lady Gaga or something, just I was like, I'm gonna be a bassist touring the world and releasing my own CDs and stuff. But yeah, it's got injured in 2022. Yeah, I kind of pivoted to I thought I might be more of a winning a classical job and gigging on the side. But yeah, 2022 I got injured and then started working at the COC as an usher, where my teacher, Tony, told me to talk to the librarian there. And again, I didn't really realize why or what was happening, but I just started like really talking to him and he was like, oh, you should talk to the Toronto Symphony librarian. And he told me to take all these like summer festival tests and things for library. And I started looking into those and really started studying and my brain just started completely going and I got so into it and loved it. And yeah, I was lucky enough to get into Sarasota and then I studied even more and more. It just kind of snowballed from there. But yeah, it was a slow progression. I didn't really realize what the field was. And then
for the audience, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. You can.
I was just going to ask for the audience, for those who may not, maybe even know what an orchestral librarian does. Could you maybe just give a little overview, just so people have,
Yeah. I would say, my job is to get the right music to the right people at the right time.
Which probably sounds easier.
Sounds easier said than done. Yeah. So we have it's not a huge orchestra here in Edmonton, but it's a core of 60 musicians. But we do 54 different programs a year. So, that can range from pop stuff to 20 pieces on a program to big classical concerts with 3 pieces on a program. One is not necessarily easier than the other, but pops is definitely a lot of work on a library. It's my job to get the program from artistic admin and be like, this is realistic, this is not realistic, budget it all out ahead of time as well. This is too much money. This is, this has 10 trombones in it. We can't do this. Or if we want to do this, we need to hire 10 trombonists. And are we cool doing that? Yes. Okay. This is not actually available, this piece that you want to do. Things like that. And doing that in a timely fashion. And then at that point, it's my job to rent, purchase, or pull off our stacks. And then make sure it's in good working condition, which is fixing page turns so people can actually play the music, making sure it's legible, making sure the right notes are on the page. Sometimes there's a lot of mistakes, either in modern copy work from, people rushing on the computer or composer change their mind, or just, old editions. And this has been, it's 200 years old. Things happen, get lost in translation. So it's our job to fix that, hopefully before the first rehearsal. Yeah. And then we folder everything and put it out to all editions.
The easy part, right?
Yeah. We do a lot of like digital manipulation as well.
Yeah. But I mean,
and we do all the bowings as well. It's our job to make sure all the string players are moving in the right direction.
There's a
Coordinate.
light. There's a wonderful comment in the chat saying Peter is humbly downplaying how talented or gifted you have to be to get into one of those festivals. Take some serious talent and grit or hard work. It's a very meticulous job, it sounds like.
Yeah,
But
thank
no,
you.
thank
Yeah,
you
that
for
was the summer festivals were a lot of work, but I found it really enjoyable.
Oh, this is that's such a wonderful thanks for sharing that because it just helps
Yeah.
contextualize because I think a lot of people aren't well a lot of people aren't aware that there are people behind the scenes doing what you do.
Mhm.
It can seem as easy as, you just buy music from the publisher, you give it to the musicians, and
Right.
it could just be perceived like that. But I think it's really helpful for people to see what happens behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
we'll circle back. A few
Thank
things.
you. Yeah.
Thank you. How about you, John? Curious, um, self-proclaimed coffee nerd to potentially forever hiatus on the DMA. How would you describe your story to Broadway?
Um, First, I gotta say, Peter, I'm listening to you, and my anxiety was going up every second listening to you talk. And I was like, oh my God. Like we have librarians on Broadway, but I've worked with orchestral librarians and like the organization that the first moment in rehearsal, there's everything has to be done and completed before then. Like when downbeat happens, if you're missing like it, yeah, I'm stressed out hearing, but I'm so impressed by you guys. I do, but keep everything together. So my story. Well, first, um, hi everybody, Peter, Sarah, Cindy, and hi everybody in this webinar. Thanks for coming out. I have to tell everybody how I met Cindy because this will segue into why I am where I am. So Cindy and I met at Orford Music Festival, which is where a bunch of hotshots in every instrument group get together, and Cindy was one of those hotshots. I was just there. I I learned very quickly that somebody probably dropped out, and I took their place. Um, so that's how Cindy and I know each other from X number of years ago, and I won't say how many. Um, yeah, I don't know if my path was so much of a detour because that would insinuate that I had a direction and knew where I was going, and I still don't really have that. And I'm like more okay with the fact that my windy path will continue to be windy. So I started in a traditional path. You go to school and then you do an undergrad, and people are sort of figuring out what's going to happen after an undergrad. And what I did was do what a lot of people do, which was hit the academic pause button and did a master's because that would buy me a little bit more time to sort things out. And of course, it didn't. Um, and then in the summertime, I a friend of mine from Western was like, "Hey, I'm going away for the summer, but I have this job at a regional theater in Sarnia. It's a chair. It's a keyboard two chair, which just means like you're playing synth instruments in a small Broadway pit." And he was like, I'm not going to be there, but I'd be happy to put your name in uh, if you're into it. So I said, yeah, like I'm just happy to pay rent, have food. I don't know, I'll figure it out. I said, okay. So I met the music director at a Starbucks. It was more or less like a vibe check situation because I was new. And so I did the gig, and that kind of happened. And I tried to hit another pause button and started a doctorate. But then that regional theater gig kept snowballing and turned into more opportunities. And I was happy to just follow the crumbs because, life, rent. Um, but I started meeting, more and more people who were in the scene and based in New York. And then I started doing Broadway, tours around the United States and Canada. And then very gradually, all of my professional contacts I realized were from New York. So, fast forward 8, 9 years later, after COVID happened, there was the great pause of 2020. Um, Somebody who I'd worked with on a tour said, Tina, the Teen Turner musical is reopening, and there's going to be a chair available. Would you like us to throw your name in the hat, for interviews? And I said, yeah, I don't have anything going on in my life. Throw my hat in for whatever. I ended up booking the show, and then I just stayed in New York, and that's how I'm here. And I have a small 2.5-year-old, and I'll probably be here for 15 more years. And I'm still figuring out what all of this is. But in the meantime, I'm still paying bills and still doing the thing. And yeah, so the path is windy, but I'm more okay with that now than I was 10 years ago, I guess. Yeah.
I think that's really refreshing and helpful to always hear because I don't want to speak for Peter and Sarah, but I definitely always tend to feel like that. It's just this constant what's next feeling. Even on externally, it can appear like we've arrived somewhere, right? Or people look up to you or say, oh, you must know exactly what you're doing because you are in a certain, perceived stature of some sort or position or established somehow but no, that's I think really interesting. And thank you all so much for sharing those the backgrounds. I'm curious, and I think Peter kind of he took the lead and jumped he read my mind for this question. But when you were in your undergrad when you were 18, what did you think your career would look like at 30? I know Peter's kind of already alluded to this gigging, concert soloist, bassist recording, but what did you th really think your careers would look like? Did you have an idea, or was there a trajectory you were aiming for, or just kind of going with the flow of things? I'm just curious, whoever would like to jump on.
I can go ahead. Yes, I also find it comforting to hear John be honest about the the very relatable experience about kind of wondering where you're going, what's happening next. For me, I think that more or less, or yeah, I think the majority of the people I knew when I was 18 uh, that were in a career in music, it was classical and orchestral. And actually, like a nod to the National Youth Orchestra because I was part of that in the summers between my high school years. It was doing that, the orchestra program in the summer where I was kind of playing all day, when I started to think, oh, maybe I want to do a career in music. Um, Even though I already really loved more kind of like the folk and songwriter style of music, I didn't really know how to approach that as a career, but it seemed a little more apparent to me how I might do it through classical. So, um, and my violin teacher at the time as well, he was kind of like, well, if you want to work in music, you can play in an orchestra. And he was like, don't even bother with anything else. And honestly, like, I think of that comment sometimes, because on the one hand, well, it's not exactly easy to just get an orchestra job, even if you really want it. But if it's not exactly what you want, it's going to be even harder. um, but on the other hand, I appreciate what he was saying because if you get a job like that, you have like a salary and you do have a bit more of an idea of what's coming next. As long as you stick to it, I guess, and as long as the orchestra is doing well. Um, but anyway, so I started my undergrad and I went to McGill for classical violin, which is like competitive enough that I had to be like dedicated to practicing classical music on the violin. And so yeah, I thought that's it. I guess I'll play in an orchestra and if I want to do anything else, it'll just be on the side and um I didn't even really know if that was accessible to me, I don't think. Um,
Mhm.
but at the same time, the whole time that I was studying for my undergrad, I just like I was bit by this like fiddle and singing and songwriting bug that I could not shake. Like as much as my teacher said like you have to focus, like this is enough work just doing this like classical program. How can you also be playing in pubs late at night? And the way I felt was like, how can I not? So it's just like a really strong sense of musical voice in this other genre, I think. Um, and about halfway through the degree, so 2 years in, I was like, no, this is not who I am. And I was kind of extreme about it. I was like, I'm not gonna do masters. I'm not gonna keep going this orchestral path. Um, and Yeah, and so I finished the degree. Like I enjoyed it enough, and was getting um I was still getting a lot out of it. But my mindset just changed, and my teachers knew it did, and that was okay. And I
Mhm.
took as many jazz electives as I could actually, especially for like theory and arranging and a little bit of playing. But that was really helpful, just to learn some kind of, I guess, jazz, just like to be able to write a chart,
Mhm.
which is applicable to other contemporary styles, like folk, pop, or whatever. Or like often our bass players have jazz backgrounds, so it's like, yeah, those have been really useful skills. Um, and just things like using notation software and um,
Mhm.
yeah, that was I still didn't feel like gonna drop out of school. Like I was happy to be there. I had like a shift in mindset.
Mhm.
Um, but the thing that surprised me, like 6 or 8 years later, um, was that I actually came back to classical music more than I ever thought I would. Um, Not as like the kind of main focus,
Mhm.
but I realized that it was like this deep training and ability I have, and I actually really do enjoy it on the side. Um, and depending on the year, it probably actually brings me a bit more financial stability than
Mhm.
folk music does. I mean, the realm of like indie music, original music is just really, it's changed a lot over the last 10 years. It's really hard to follow. Like when I first
Mhm.
got into it, all the advice was to, you know, hire publicists for radio publicity and
Mhm.
this kind of like older forms of publicity. Like when I first started, even just 10 or 15 years ago, it was like print magazines still existed. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of just been like this really weird moving target in
Mhm.
terms of how to like get our music out there, original music. We've been learning digital marketing and all that. Um, but it's sort of, yeah, it's really challenging in terms of the financial side. I know it's not just us, like a lot of our peers who they're really doing well in terms of like uh, creative success, maybe you could say, and like, yeah, getting
Mhm.
awards and playing festivals. But it's sort of behind the scenes. I know that we're all kind of struggling financially. I mean, it also doesn't help like that the expectation for listening to music now is, streaming is sort of unregulated and kind of
Mhm.
unethical, basically. Um, and so, like, we're not getting paid properly. So, and it's so expensive to make an album. Like, I don't even know when we'll ever make one again, which is sort of like seems like a sad thing to say. I know we will, and it will probably just have to like write lots of grants or just slowly save up to it. But grants are so hit and miss too. Like, so my ability to play, like to teach violin, help students do RCM exams or fiddle or what, mix of things, but have kind of a background where I can teach my instrument. Um, and just like play weddings or sub with the
Mhm.
symphony, or I've been doing candlelight series lately.
Mhm.
It's been really helpful, and I still feel like myself in it. Interestingly, like I'm, it's not like like I just said earlier that I really felt strong voice and kind of creative like folk stuff. Um, but actually coming back to classical music after a break and having spent a
Mhm.
time in these other genres,
Mhm.
I kind of came back to classical music with a sense of voice and self, and the way I play violin feels different. It feels like I kind of have a voice in it, even if I'm not certain chopsy things. Maybe I'm not doing the way others would, but then there's
Mhm.
things I know that I do bring to it. So yeah, there's kind of like a new musical comfort when I am in a classical setting now.
Mhm. Or even
Yeah.
just how transferable things can be from one genre to the next unexpectedly sometimes, and how
Yeah.
some of the skills just overlap without like the improvisatory nature of some. But yeah, it's really wonderful to kind of see how that can always be discovered, I guess, in a
Yeah.
way from genre to genre. That's
Yeah.
well, it's so
Yeah.
interesting. Um, I'm curious, John, if I know you had said there was a kind of maybe just kind of going with the flow and seeing how things uh from one thing to the next. But I was curious when you had started your undergrad, if you maybe had there was an aspiration for something at age 30, or if you thought like, oh, this is what my 30-year-old self will be doing, whether a daydream or actual target. If you felt like others, or that was kind of the norm of what was expected.
No, I had zero aspirations.
Mm,
Uh, I guess when I got to Western, because there's such a big voice program there,
mhm,
that's kind of how I fell into working with singers.
mm,
And that's also the time I realized I'm much happier if I'm working with other people. I did
mm,
the like 4 to 6 hours in a practice room thing,
mm,
and that was okay. And I'm glad I did because I really feel like in New York, if I have to lean on strong playing, like that's something I have, but it was lonely for me. And
mm,
I would much rather be in a room with 2, 10, 30 people than be by myself. Now I do that work for other reasons so I can be more effective in a room with, other people. Once I figured that out, then it became a little bit clearer that whatever it is I'm going to do, I'm going to want it to be in a collaborative space. I'm going to want to bounce ideas off of other people and create something together, whether it's, specifically music or, theater or whatever it was. After that, you know, then things sort of naturally progress from there.
And I think I think that resonates a lot with people who are probably listening, the panelists. Just knowing, I know it sounds maybe cheesy, but knowing ourselves enough to know that spending that time, that solitary time isn't maybe even sustainable for our long-term kind of longevity or happiness or whatever you want to call it. By the way, John is an excellent pianist and 100% was a hot shot at Orford. So he's an excellent pianist. But all to say,
One thing I've learned about, not, I'm I've been in New York for almost 5 years now,
yeah.
and I've worked with a lot of different groups of people. I've, kind of done the pop thing, the Broadway thing, like,
Mm,
whatever, and whatever comes in my inbox, like I'm probably saying yes. Um, Pretty much everybody has imposter syndrome at, at,
mm,
at the highest levels, which you would think is crazy, because these are like, Tony winners, Grammy, like everybody has a sprinkle of it, which when I got here made me feel a little bit better. It's like, oh, you've had 8 Broadway shows, but you still feel like you're not supposed to take up space here. Once I
mm,
started hearing that from people, I felt a lot better about my own imposter syndrome because I'm not somebody. I can't rattle off the 300 most popular music theater songs. I don't know them. I'm not from this world, but I'm also not really in other worlds either. I've kind of like
mm,
mishmashed a bunch of things together. So I always felt like, I played audition piano a little bit to, pay some bills, and people would throw music, and I'm like, oh, I can read, but I have no idea what show this is from. And I'm sure you expect me to know what this is from, but I don't know any of it. But then if you put something with slashes in front of me, that was more comfortable because now it's like, oh, you want this to be in that style. I got that.
mm,
Like that's
mm,
that's fine. So um this is all just to say I think it's more than okay to feel like you don't you don't know if you're supposed to be doing whatever it is that you're doing, and you know I don't know. I
Mm.
don't know if that made any sense at all, but that's what I'm saying.
I think that's something that comes up so often in these chats, that sense of imposter syndrome. I think it just some resonates so thoroughly with everyone, really. I'm wondering how, if and feel free for anyone to jump in, how you deal with those moments of doubt or comparison, or when those little thoughts creep up, if or when, I should say.
For me, it's all the time. In New York City, there's like heavy jazz cats on every corner, and the show I'm currently in has like a lot of, jazz
Mhm.
influence on it. And, you know,
Mhm.
even when I'm doing like there's a gig I did at Bryant Park with a singer named
Mhm.
Des Duran.
Mhm.
Um, and there's like 4,000 people there. I didn't know that's how many people were going to show up. It was kind of like a free concert. It was in partnership with Carnegie Hall. And the people I had hired to be on the gig are all serious jazzers. So they sounded great. But when it was my, turn to play a little bit, I was like, I didn't think about it because now I've gotten over the fact that, okay, this is going to be on the internet. This is forever. Whatever I do here is like, it's just going to be written in stone. And the more I kind of got comfortable with that, the more I felt, all right, if I shit all over this solo, that's it. Like that's just what it is. There are people who can do this better than me, and that's okay. And once I was able to get around that, it's like, okay, I'm not that person who's going to go to Smalls and crush that jam session, and that's fine. I have, my toolkit, and
Mhm.
hopefully it'll get better over time, but it's okay if it's not as strong as the person next to me. It probably will never be, and that's fine because I've got other tools that they don't have, and everyone's going to
Mhm.
have their own mix of things. Um, but constantly, I'm always, like even in our orchestra, there's like a trumpet player who toured with like Ray Charles and Buddy Rich, and I'm just like, oh my God, like what am I doing here? I'm not supposed to be. But it's fine. They think whatever you're doing is also hard. Like so everyone does what they do, and it's fine.
It's always those perceptions, right? Until we're in the shoes of the other person. Peter or Sarah, I'm wondering if you want to add anything to uh, those thoughts. Like, how do you deal with the questioning even sometimes?
Yeah.
Like, do I belong here even?
Yeah, sorry. I think yeah, I've had a lot of imposter syndrome, and again, like speaking with a lot of musicians, I think we pretty much all have it to some degree or at different times of our careers. Yeah, I kind of I've used it as a bit of like a driving factor. Um, and as someone that has been like when I did Toronto Symphony Youth Orchestra and NYO as well, like I was that person that was like waitlisted. I was that person that was like the last person that was picked. And when I did TSYO, I was in fourth fourth year of university, and my STEM partner, I was like, oh, like how old are you? Like all this, like what are you in school for? And he's like, I'm in grade 8. I'm like, haha, no, like seriously. And he's like, no, I'm in grade 8. I'm like, okay, that's crazy. I didn't even know what a double bass was in grade 8, and you're already doing, um, yeah. So just getting over there was a lot of stuff to deal with ego wise at that point. And yeah, same with NYO. But again, I met a lot of my like best friends there, and I just practiced a lot. And yeah, I was still in the mentality that I was a jazz musician at that point. That
Mhm.
was like, and people would always be like, "Oh, it's pretty great that you got into like NYO, like 2 years into your classical career, but you're still a jazz bassist," and I would always be
Mhm.
as such, which I found really hard. And when I was in jazz circles, it was weird. I was dealing with a lot of issues because I was even doing a few like entry level musicals, and some people would be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
Peter's a classical guy." It's like, no, he's a jazz. And like, well, who is he? And it's like, well, now like I'm just a musician.
Mhm.
Like I'm skilled enough at those, electric bass, double bass, library. I have enough. I've listened to enough music. I know what the styles are. Um, and yeah, even again, when I was at Sarasota, like that was really isolating for me, and I did not feel like I belonged there. Yeah, because there's all these great musicians, and then yeah, I didn't feel confident enough in the library as well. Like that was like really early for me. But then spent that next year studying and did my job at the ballet. And
Mm.
by the time I got into Tanglewood and I arrived there, I was like, oh, like again, like I had certain jobs lined up, and I was like, okay, like I'm here.
Mm.
I did have like certain accolades on base as well. Like people were treating, I mean, they were treating me with a lot of respect, which
Mm.
I, I felt really welcomed by the people there. Like the bass section welcomed me in. Um, and I did really well on that, like, the entry test, and I'm there for a reason. I,
Mm.
I see. I guess that's my thing. It's like when I start talking to people that have, oh, I've been in classical music for 15 years, and I've only been it for, what year are we in? I guess like 7 years now or something. But it's like I had to do a lot of work to get here. Like I know I've done that. So I feel confident being in this space now. So it's I just know that, yeah, inside me, like I listen to the music I've studied, it's there, and just trusting that. Um,
Mhm.
I guess that's it's taken me a while, but trusting yourself. Yeah.
Mhm. And the little successes along the way that
Yeah.
maybe don't seem big to other people, but they're internal wins or just reminders of how far we've
Mhm.
all come, right?
Yeah. And talking to mentors and family, and
Mm.
that's huge and cannot be understated as well.
It's,
Yeah. Thanks.
Sarah, I'm wondering, anything, thoughts?
Yeah.
Even the question of identities, I'm curious as well. If both Peter and John, since all of you are in such polyvalent positions, and just this idea, what Peter is saying, oh, this so and so is a classical musician, so and so is a indie or bluegrass. That how does one, not even just within oneself, but how do you deal with that professionally as well? Or even as a pianist, oh, they're a collaborative pianist or a solo pianist, sort of thing. Um, but also, Sarah, if you'd like to start with the doubts thing as well, that
Oh
would be
yeah.
wonderful.
No worries. I will just say to Peter that I've always admired bass players, and um, there's actually a bass player in Edmonton that when I was in high school, I'd see him around everywhere. John Taylor, I think was his name. I think he played with Edmonton Symphony Orchestra, and well, I know he did, and I'm just not sure I got his name right. Um, but I would see him also at the Yardbird Suite playing jazz. I just like see him everywhere, and I really loved that. And I guess maybe I just saw something in that I've always seen in myself, which is an interest in a lot of different styles. Um, and yeah, for a while, I kind of almost felt bad about that. Like, why can't I just choose one thing? But in time, I've realized, oh, I love that. I'm like that. It just took, not from Duran Duran. No, I don't think so. Different. Again, I'm not positive I got his name right. um, Sorry, responding to something in the chat. Uh, yeah, at the end of the day, I guess I've just accepted that I'm inspired by a lot of different kinds of music, and it's just part of who I am, and that's okay. The one thing though is not only do I like different types of music, I like to be involved in it in different ways. Meaning, we've talked mostly about violin slash fiddle, but I also sing and write songs and play banjo a little bit. But that kind of goes hand in hand with being easily
Mm.
inspired and interested. It's like, oh, like I want to do that too. um, and I would say like it was a challenge and still is a challenge at times. But in my 20s, it was a challenge, especially because I wasn't putting all my time into one thing, and so everything was moving slower. Uh, and basically, like each skill needed its own time. And I feel like I would see people hitting, like, at least that's my perception, hitting certain milestones because they were focused. Um, and I was kind of like, I know I can do that, but I'm like spread thin. Um, but just sticking in a way, like I finally accepted, like this is how I am. I'm just gonna be interested in different things. I'm gonna nurture them all in different ways. Find ways to handle that. It's kind of
Mhm.
challenging. Um, And then I would say in the last 5 years or so, so like more in my 30s, it started to feel like it was coming together. And it was
Mm.
like, oh, okay, I just had to be patient, like give each thing its time. I still want to be so much better at everything, of course. Um,
Mhm.
and I do sometimes wonder, like, will I even get where I want to in this lifetime? Um,
Mhm.
but there's a sort of like initial feeling of not having arrived, but of kind of like just being a little closer to being able to deliver what I hear in my head and not
Mhm.
quite such a wide gap. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I say that, and there's still like a list of things I wish I could do more fluently, but it does feel like there's been a shift. Um,
Mhm.
and so I feel more comfortable. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, a big thing that hasn't been mentioned, I don't think, is I have 3 kids.
Mhm.
And so that's sort of like, you might even hear them in the background, but that's a big thing right now is kind of figuring
Mhm.
out how this all fits together with them. The 2 youngest are they're just she's almost 2, and the next one is 9 months old, and then we have an 8-year old. Um,
Mhm.
but it means like for sure less touring than we used to do. Luke and I, even
Mhm.
my husband and I, even with one kid, we could tour a little more. Now it's like we're not going to do that as much for a while. But you know what? I'm saying that as if it's because of kids, but it was again really tough financially. So actually, kids or not, I think we might have been shifting away from that. And then now it's just also at home, like how this all works with kids. I always thought if I needed to kind of, if the challenges of like doing freelance and original work were too heavy, I always thought, well, I'll just teach a lot. I like teaching. I feel like I'm
Mhm.
passing on this magic. Like I actually really love teaching, but
Mhm.
I actually don't want to be working like 3 to 9 p.m. though when kids are home
Mhm.
from school. So I'm kind of right now sort of unsure about some different things, but again, I guess we'll just give it some patience.
I
And
want to comment on this thing about having multiple interests and skill sets because I think as musicians, especially if you have interests in multiple genres, it's easy to get trapped into this pattern of feeling like I'm not specialized and therefore I I'm not an ace at one thing. But what I've learned is that there's sometimes you're more valuable if you have more than one skill set. Um, the bass chair on my show currently requires some serious arco chops, like non-vibrato, unison with cello. Like you really got to be able to hang, but there's also a heavy jazz component too. So you've got to be, it really is a hybrid chair. And I remember when we were trying to feel out, all right, who are we going to put in this chair? It's really got to be someone who is not just convincing, but like can really crush the jazz stuff, but also hang on the arco stuff. Um, so in some ways, I always joke when I tell people, I say, I'm not, my line is, I'm a B or a B minus at many things, but I'm not an A at one thing, which I'm learning is actually very valuable in this city. And I think, as a bass player or a guitar player, whatever, the more things you can be like convincing at, I think professionally it's more helpful. Because I can tell you our bass player, when he was trying to find subs, it wasn't like there were a ton of guys in town that could convincingly hang on the whole book. They'd either be really great at one section of it, or not a lot of guys came in and were really great at both. Um, I'm really just saying this, in case anybody who's out there watching this webinar, like if you feel like, I like three different, that's cool. And if if there is a lot of value in space for people who have, they want to do the pop thing. They also want to do, they want to play 5 string. And they also want to like, do upright and arco. Like it's better actually. Yeah.
I'm really glad you said all that actually,
Mhm.
because that articulates a lot of things that, yeah, of how I've been feeling in the last, like realizing in the last few years, where initially, like I said, I wasn't sure if that was a good thing, but now it's true. Like the things I get involved in, they'll surprise me and they'll be like really inspiring and delightful. Like because it's like, oh, I'm using all the different facets of who I am as a musician. And that's that's pretty amazing. So when we were doing our tech sound check before this call, um, Lara, who I don't think we've seen, but she mentioned that I was in a play last year, and uh, this playwright wrote a fiddle player into the script. Like there was a just the presence in the notes of there's a fiddle player on stage, but didn't give them lines or anything. Um, and there's no music. It's not a musical. And so the director is like, okay, I need to have a fiddle player, but they're gonna have to bring. It's a Nova Scotia set story. It's by Viola Desmond, who's if anyone doesn't know, sort of a Rosa Parks story in Canada, but she was before her actually. Anyways, yeah, they wanted me to bring in different elements of traditional music, well, of Nova Scotia music. So a little bit of like the Scottish thing, but actually, by and large, wanted quite a bit more of, because Viola Desmond, it's very much like a Black African Nova Scotian story. Um, they wanted me to bring in more of that, um, Black music, which is not my specialty, but um, having played bluegrass, which of course has blues in it, it was like, okay, I can kind of go there and meet, the cast they're all great singers, and I could kind of like collaborate with them and meet them in more of a gospel and blues realm. Um, but I also was on stage like walking around and had to memorize it all, like so, and which for me was totally fine, but it just made me realize like, okay, this is a situation where having a variety of skills is really working out well.
I was wondering if any or all of you or would give an example or what you've found was maybe one of the most transferable skills across all the types of work that you've done. And in contrast, what has been a steep learning curve, whether it's musical or extra musical. Um, yeah.
I have thoughts, but I feel like I've been talking a lot. I don't know if Peter and John have something to say.
Yeah. So by far the hardest thing I had to wrap my head around. I mean, being around this community, really is iron sharpens iron. There's so many great music directors in town, and anytime I get a chance to do a workshop with another music director, I'm constantly taking notes because some of these people have been breathing and living this for like their whole life. Like they knew coming out as a teenager, this is what I want to do, and they've been in New York for 30 years, and so I'm always admiring people's troubleshooting skills, how to do this more efficiently. The hardest thing for me, because music, the lifespan of a Broadway musical, it from infancy to getting a theater on Broadway is about 10 to 12 years, from the first time someone writes something to a table reading to adding a director to adding a music director. It takes about 10 to 12 years to get one of these things up. But part of that process, when you do add a music director, you've got a book writer, you've got a script, you've got songs. Now you're starting to piece things together and figuring out where songs belong in the book. How do you move the story? Part of that process in the workshop is that, typically these things are 29-hour readings. You've got 29 hours to piece things together. And as a music director, you've got the script in front of you, and you've also got, the score in front of you. And because you're always on a time crunch, things are moving very quickly, but you've also got to know where songs fit in the script. So what you're doing is you've got one eye on the script and you've got one eye on the score, and they live on the same music stand. And the director suddenly wants to change something. He wants to change something after the line. Okay, well, now we're going to cut that line. Okay, so you go in your script, you cut that line. It's like, oh, actually, we got to put it back. You start erasing the thing. Actually, we want to start act 2 with the song, and then we're going to cut the third verse. Okay, got it. Just marrying the script and the score together before that, like my brain wanted to explode. It still does. And the patience for it's at varying levels, and it always comes down to the music director. Suddenly we'll want to change the key. Suddenly it's like, okay, we're going to do half the bridge, and then we're going to got it. And then we're going to, cut 80 measures out of this because it's taking too long. Then we're going to put that process for me coming out of like kind of a classical jazz background. I didn't know what that was until my first one I got thrown in and was like, oh my goodness, I'm not prepared for this. But you do it more, and you do it with people who hopefully have a little patience when they see that you're very green. And that for me was like, I don't know this life, but I'll figure it out. But yeah, my brain just went like, I went to the white room many times.
I'm wondering then what that sounds so mind-boggling. I mean, it must be one of the few positions where you would even have to ever do that, because learning a score is already one monumental thing for a feat, really, right? For whether
That's
a
right.
conductor,
And then you've got to assign the parts to whoever, like depending on how many actors are in the room, you've kind of got to be keeping track of, typically you get 2 days to teach music, the whole score. So you've got to go in having an idea. Now I've learned, okay, look at the face sheet of the cast and kind of guess what you think their voice type is, and walk in saying, okay, you're taking the third harmony in this. And if they're like, I don't have an F, got you. All right, we're putting you there, and you swapping around. So like have as much of that. Like the last one I did in November, I just, it's a weird thing to make assumptions about people, like looking at their face and saying, I think you're a tenor. You look like someone who might be a tenor. Let's put you on as much things. So I walk in the first music rehearsal, and it's always the MD and cast, and you get 10 to 6 and 10 to 6 maybe, and then they do everything else. So it's like, I've got to teach this clearly and efficiently before the director because I'm never going to see them again. And then at the end of this part, there's a presentation, and that presentation is for other producers if they want this project to move forward and invest more money. So that's my son. He's hey. So, anyways, that's the short of it.
Were there any I'm going to ask Peter after, but John, I'm wondering, was there a single skill? I know it's hard to pick a single, but let's say a skill that comes to mind that you found particularly transferable?
I mean, obviously
Or a
reading
handful.
well, but it has nothing to do with, so the skill set of a music director, it's like depending on where you are in the process, if you're in the infancy of a project, if you're in tech, conducting the show, it's really like 5 different things. But by far, the most important skill set for a music director is just managing people. It's like something of a middle management position, because you're dealing with producers, you're dealing with a director who may be temperamental. You've got to learn how to speak choreography, because they're not like, let's go from measure 76. They're like, yeah, let's go from the boom bap kick, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, what are they talking about? All right. Okay, they want to go from the line sweep. So you write that in. They're counting this phrase in 10. It's not in 10, but they're counting it in 10 because their moves are in 10. So I just learned to write whatever number they're talking about. And then you've got to translate that when you go back to your orchestra. You're like, okay, this is measure 76. I'm going to give you 4 counts going into this. Yes, we're going from the line sweep. All right. And that. So it's really about keeping cool, but also just learning how to deal with people. You're like kind of a therapist, psychologist, knowing how certain people are going to react. And then once you get to rehearsal, you have to figure out how to talk to instrumentalists or singers to get what the project needs. Some people just want the note. Am I sharp or am I flat? Just give it to me straight. Other people, you have to like code it in a way that is giving them what you want, but also, like tiptoeing around. Same thing with directors. They're like, oh, this needs to move faster. Got you. You do it the same way, they don't know, but it feels faster than because you just said it was going to go faster, right? So it's, like kind of playing this, hide and go seek situation all the time. That's really what the gig is. It's people, but music and dancing and words.
I mean, it sounds like such a, well, like the soft skill, like an incredible number of soft skills to even let the music happen before the music even happens in that role, right? Because
Yeah, the
that's
music
just
is
like
just
the
whatever.
starting
The
line.
music is
Yeah.
over here. Like it'll happen. And everyone who's there with delegating all that stuff is so important because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, there's all this talent in the room. You don't have to make sure the orchestra, they're going
Mhm.
to be fine. They've done this. They sound great. Everybody sounds great. You
Mhm.
just have to figure out how to piece things together and give every department kind of what they need while also making sure your department gets what they need. Because
Mhm.
ultimately, the job is honoring what the composer, the orchestrator, the book writer, like what do they want? So I'm
Mhm.
in service of them, but I also have to make things clear for my folks who speak
Mhm.
music, right? So
Mhm.
it's the middle management. It's piecing all that together.
Thank you for sharing that because I think it's so rare in a way for people outside of the industry or people who might be in the audience or maybe people who are interested in doing some sort of directing or maybe are doing something in that light. Um, to know just kind of what that entails at different levels, right? So I think it's really valuable. So thanks so much for sharing that. I'm gonna ask Peter, and then I'll go to a rapid fire question for all three of you following this. But I'm wondering, Peter, as an orchestral librarian, from your because I think you're still playing as well. But what have you found to be both a transferable skill, whether musical or extra musical, and what's the steepest learning curve, or what was?
Right.
Um,
Um, yeah, I would say, well, yeah, great explanation from John, and I feel like there's a lot of um, applicable stuff that I find like in the library that I didn't necessarily learn per se from being a bass player, especially stuff like when in to pick battles and like how to speak to certain musicians, and you learn quickly how to talk to certain. Sorry, I won't name names because we're in Canada, so but yeah, just yeah, certain instruments in the orchestra, like people that play, you quickly learn who needs those notes, who needs to be talked. Like obviously, music director, concert master, just yes, I'll do what you say. You just say, you do what they say, those kind of things. But when to kind of fight, when to push back. And again, speaking as a librarian, you also have to speak to admin as well. Um, and again, when I was in the ballet, you're also having to talk to the choreo. So you do have to understand like the dance moves, and they talk differently. Again, they don't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They talk differently. So you have to speak to people in different ways. That was not taught as a bass player, obviously, but that's things you kind of again like just I would say like being curious and like having an open demeanor because when I was in school, I played I got to play with the opera. And I made an effort to be like, yes, I want to play for the opera, even though it's 2.5 hours, and some people subbed out of that. And yeah, just being attentive, being like, oh, they're talking to the chorus master, they're talking on stage, they're kind of talking differently. What are they talking about? Just like
mm,
pay attention, those sort of things. Like there's a lot of different stuff going on, and I was always attentive to that. So that's, I guess, skills that I learned, but were not directly taught to me.
mhm,
Um, things that yeah, I learned again, but not directly taught, is playing section bass versus principal bass. And again, learning that, yeah, like maybe when you're playing section, you don't speak to other sections as much and just kind of lay back and let the principal talk. And when you're sitting principal, it's like, oh, now it's my job to talk to the principal cello, talk to the concert master. Maybe don't talk to the conductor still. Like there's like certain, yeah, you just learning those skills, I guess. Sorry, did that answer the question? I think there was a bit more
oh,
I went on
oh
it.
no, absolutely. That's like there's so many unspoken or implicit, let's say, etiquette rules, whatever we want to call them, ways of approaching things that
Yeah.
sometimes we're not explicitly uh, taught but sometimes we're expected, if we can use that word, to kind of know and
Yeah.
or we quickly learn or um, assimilate, let's say, by being in a certain environment.
Oh,
Before we do jump to the rapid fire, I did want to ask Sarah as well, what you may have found to be the steepest learning curve, especially with the bombadils as kind of in this journey so far.
Um, yeah, the kind of personal skills that John and Peter are talking about are important too. I've been mostly in smaller groups, so just like running recording sessions or rehearsals and, developing a good way to, uh, give feedback when we have like I or my husband who's also kind of leader, like if we have a vision to communicate that, but then also to just let people be themselves as musicians as well. Um, I would say that's yeah, it's kind of a skill that was sort of learned but not taught. Um,
Mhm.
and then, but for us with original music, kind of independent, there's so many business skills, and I still have no idea what I'm doing. But kind of starting to get a little real now that I'm like, all right, I'm in my mid 30s. I have 3 kids. I have to actually figure this out. Um, and I mean, one thing that's just bit us every year, and I think we're finally on top of it this year, um, is just organizing all our receipts to a spreadsheet and like just keeping on top of tax stuff as self-employed people. Um, and I didn't even know that we were supposed to like register our band as a business for years. Like, so we just didn't do that, and finally, I think we did it. Started doing that. And I'm even now looking at things like uh, for self-employed, like what's our options for like employment insurance or like, you know, illness or disability or like, and things. I guess maybe I'm just starting to like realize I'm not like an invincible 20-year-old forever. Like, um, and like these things are just like, no one has ever brought them up.
Mhm.
Um, and, or even like when it comes to fees, thinking like there's a certain hourly wage that I can live off, but then realizing like I'm paying my sick days, I'm paying my retirement, I'm like I actually have to charge like double what I thought I did, and then but then feeling like you like, music is sort of like something you don't want to put like a barrier around, so wanting things to be
Mhm.
accessible, and I don't know, it's like I think there's a lot there that we've just learned as we've gone, as we're going, and we're still learning. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, like if anyone is considering this kind of career path that I seem to be in, I would say like business skills early on would be really useful. And I just like that was not part of like at the beginning was just focusing on performance or
Mhm.
like yeah, creative abilities, artistic abilities, which still at the end of the day is actually the most important thing. Because that really does drive the career, but yeah, all these other little things around it are pretty important too. So,
And I
yeah.
think that's something all of our guests at some point have essentially mentioned, or
Yeah.
on every panel, right?
Yeah.
But those things that allow the creativity to happen, the very logistical, practical elements as well.
Hmm.
But no, thanks so much to all of you for sharing. There are some really wonderful questions in the Q&A. So before we get there, I want to ask, we ask all of our guests this rapid fire question. So whoever'd like to jump in, is your current definition of success in your life right now the same as it was when you were in undergrad? And if not, how has it changed? Or just your definition of success, how has it changed over the years?
Success for me is being healthy, regardless of what everything else is doing.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, career's important and you want to make the art that you want to make, but you can't do any of those things if you're unhealthy or in a hospital.
Hmm.
So being able to get up and play and do the things, you have to be healthy first. So that's for me, I think that's
Mhm.
the most success that you can have.
Hmm. No, thank you.
yeah, for me, it was always making a living with music. And I guess now that, again, which I didn't know library was in music before that. So yes, I'm a musician. Librarians are musicians. I'm successful now. I'm making a living with music as well. That was my definition. It has,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's great. And Sarah?
Um, that answer from John was kind of unexpected but relatable of health, and that I'm thinking sort of like body, mind, and spirit too. So like, um, for me, it's kind of uh, to feel like the creatively I'm like aligned, uh, meaning I'm making music that I really believe in, which is, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I think it's been easy. Like there have definitely been times where I've been trying to do something that's not really me, if that makes or something. I think I'm trying to do something that I should be. And maybe this is more part of the like the writer side, and to just try to be for me like I feel most successful if I'm actually just being brave enough to put out there what I really want to say and not what I think people like or want. um I think early on, my definition of success might have been more to do with like scale of audience or something,
Mhm.
um, or a bit more like Peter said, making a living in music. For me, I've actually dropped that as my personal definition, and I feel a bit more like, I have a friend who's a poet. Like he's like, that's who I am. I'm a poet. He never once has thought that he would like pay for his life with it. He's like, I'm always gonna have another job. Um, but like who I am and what I kind of put out there is poetry.
Mhm.
And I think I used to be a lot more ambitious about like I have to like bring money home from my songs. Um,
Mhm.
and that would be good if that happened. And I mean it does in like fits and starts.
Mhm.
But it doesn't in like a kind of consistent way, I guess. But at the same time, the last album we put out, it was our third. Um, it was really one where my husband and I like it was our mission to not worry about what the music we should be making and try to be a lot more honest about like this is what we hear inside. And
Mhm.
I really feel like it's a different album than the other ones before because we committed to that more and
Mhm.
it feels more successful just because like I don't know, it just feels more sincere, like the conversation that we're kind of um, having with listeners. Maybe it feels more like, I don't know, the conversations we're trying to have here today. I kind of want to do that with music.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
No, thanks so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it, and I think it resonates with a lot the kind of authenticity, whether it's musically or about values that we hold individually towards things, and just honoring that in a way, whether or not that's what brings the money in. It doesn't mean that people can't still be musicians and, have different diverse work or a poet, let's say. I think, and it's so important to hear, I think, that we doesn't it's not a uni singular path. I'm gonna jump over to some of the Q&A questions. Let's see. And from an anonymous attendee, it can seem that for all of the panelists, your music education was the foundation for learning your new endeavor. Did any of you make use of other resources to learn a new skill? And feel free to jump on.
Yeah, I might.
Peter? Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
just there was a few here that also asked if I had an MLIS as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't have an MLIS. Some librarians do. Most of them don't. Sorry, some like yes, the distinction is performance librarians. I think is an important distinction. We're not a circulation library, and I've never done that training, so I don't totally know what is taught in that, but it does not seem necessary. What I will say is necessary for the job is having an understanding of orchestral repertoire and basically being a musician. Um, so generally, that means having an undergraduate in some sort of performance program. I think that's pretty essential, and most of my colleagues have that. Um, Some of them even have master's degrees. I have a master's degree in double bass performance as well. That I think that really comes to play. There's so many small things that happen. You just have to understand how orchestras live and breathe. Yeah, that's not really taught to you in a circulation library. It's just a different kettle of fish. And yeah, so how we get training outside of like mentorship through, I think, yeah, traditionally it would be like go study with the Edmonton Symphony librarian and you kind of just shadow them and learn. Now there's a few summer festivals. You can find them on the MOLA, Major Orchestra Librarian Association website. They have a careers page and a training opportunity page and free resources there. So yeah, they post these summer festivals. Some are trickier to get into than others. And then you go for 3 weeks to 2 months and kind of study with someone that is like a principal librarian of an orchestra that also runs one of these festivals. And that's how we learn. And I think I mean, yeah, I want to make it a more widespread thing. I think there should be more learning opportunities, but I don't think there should be an undergraduate for music librarians. I think you, again, you need to have your regular undergraduate. You need that knowledge there. Yeah.
No, thanks, Peter. I'm wondering, Sarah or John, if there was any investment monetarily or otherwise in skills that were not necessarily developed through, let's say, formal training or education.
No.
Nope. Okay.
I'd be in such big trouble if I ever had to pivot. I have no skills outside of music. Not that if it had to be done, I could, but I'm kind of all in at this point. And
Mhm.
and I feel like I'm not mad about any of it, but it would be for me to move away from music at this point, boy, would that be a challenge. Yeah, the answer is no.
And Sarah, I'm wondering if you were alluding to some of the business things. I'm wondering, was that kind of self-taught or did you seek or anything in your endeavors?
There's a
Where did
lot of self-taught in my situation. Like even if it means calling Canada Revenue and asking lots of questions. Um, but yeah, a lot of self-taught probably because we're kind of paving our own way, you know, like there with our band. Like we decide if we're going to release an album or if we're going to tour or what we're gonna do. There's a lot of little skills like just like how to make a website or yeah, admin stuff. Honestly, I was quite surprised to hear this, but I teach more like work on songwriting actually with an adult student who's a lawyer as a career and she wants to learn how to write songs. And after we wrote some songs together, she wanted to record them. So we've started that process. And at one point, she said something that surprised me. She said, "Your admin skills are better than a lot that I've seen as a lawyer in like offices." And I was like, "Are you joking me?" Because I just feel like a scattered musician with like I said, my receipts like falling out of like everywhere. So, but I guess that's just sort of maybe just like the emailing skill, the scheduling skill, the spreadsheet skill. Like that's just learned.
Mhm.
And I didn't really think that was something I was good at. Like I developed the skill, but I always thought of myself as more of like scatterbrain artsy person, Like I've always had like the messiest room with my siblings but I think I just had to learn those things. And
Mhm.
so now I might almost say I'm an organized person. Yeah.
No, that's really, I think that makes total sense. I'm gonna switch to a question. I think John just answered this, but this is from Chris Zavadowski. It's John and all, knowing what you know now, if you could go back and do it all again, would you do something differently? If so, what?
Gotta learn, gotta learn about money. It's if you're a freelancing artist, man, you gotta you just you need to know how to build up reserve, where to put, because this life is it's such a roller coaster. And you need to know how to weather those storms. It's possible, but there's definitely a better way to go about it. And I feel like it should be taught in a first year music course, you know, how to even things like how to prepare your taxes. Like, what can you put on your taxes? Can you put a music studio? Yeah, absolutely. Like, all of those things need to go on there somewhere. What about the lift that you took from, the airport to the gig? Yes, you should be taking all that stuff out, and you need to know how to do it, because so that's stuff I wish I would have learned like decades earlier. But other than that, I think everything is cool.
Mm. Sarah or Peter, would you do it all again? And if not, or would you do something differently? If so, what? If you could go back and do it again.
I would basically do it the same, other than uh, yeah, taking care of my health more. I think musicians are athletes and we should be treated as such. Get physio and massages before you get seriously injured. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, like uh, have a life outside of music a bit. Yeah, and just like basically keep the mental stuff alive. Don't it can be pretty hard. Just yeah, locking yourself in a practice room can lead to some pretty serious imposter syndrome and
Mm.
dark times. So yeah,
Mm.
keep the mental side healthy as well.
Right. And Sarah?
Um, Creatively, I would keep it mostly the same. Like I'm glad I followed my whims. And health-wise too, actually, I'm just really fortunate to have kind of um, early on been just people reminding me to take care of my body. Um, so it's pretty. I've always been pretty proactive with that, and I do feel and know that that's important. So I'm grateful for that. So wouldn't change that. And I mean, I can kind of pick up on it. If I could have learned more of the business skills earlier, financial, that would have been helpful. But at the same time, it kind of, you know, it's
Mm.
just there's no getting away from it anyways. So it appeared, and I had to learn.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And just a similar and related question from an anonymous attendee. If you were starting again at 19 or 20, what's one habit you think every serious musician must have?
Practice with intent, and don't over practice. Don't be a
Mm.
hero. Don't practice for 8 hours, because you can, at that point, it's like diminishing returns. Like, put 3 hours in of extremely thoughtful practicing, and that will always be better than 8 hours of just mindless repetitions. Take one rep, really think about what it is that you're going for in the next repetition. And it's not about quantity. And I learned that later than I should have, but I think it's something that, if you can figure that out, early in your journey, that'll pay off later.
Hmm. Sarah?
I'm a little distracted by the chats. Can you remind me what the question was?
That's okay. If you were starting again at 19 or 1920, what's one habit you think every serious musician must have?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So moderation, as John was saying, that I get that, and agree with it. I for sure can have at times gotten a little bit laser focused and gone on too long with things, with practicing or whatever it is. Uh, um, at the same time, in my situation, um, I think that uh, there have been times where I've kind of put too much time into the non-music thing and then almost wasn't playing because I was like working so hard at marketing and booking tours, emails. Like there's so much. It's just endless. Like you could really do it all day. Um, and I think it's been important for me to remember to always have space for the creative work.
Mm.
Because you have to keep that alive, of course.
And then one final question from, where is this? Um, From Lawson Curry. How do you think that AI will change the music industry in the future? I really want to pursue a career in composing and songwriting, but I'm worried that AI will replace it. thoughts towards the future? And feel free to jump in. Um,
I have friends whose songwriting focus is for ads and even TV and film a little bit, and they are worried about how AI is going to affect them. I think they might even be seeing it already. I'm not worried with original music, of course, because it's like no one can be me. um, and I I'd like to give it more thought, to be honest. But my sort of first thoughts are like, well, live music will be more and more special, I guess, um, with AI.
mhm. Peter, John?
Without AI being in
Oh,
live music, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
there will be a bigger push for live music. So I think singer-songwriters and orchestra and musicals, I mean, maybe John can speak more to this, but I think the other recent push, like to have fewer and fewer like full orchestras in pits might, I mean, obviously money, but um, I think there will be people wanting to see more musicians in pits, go out to see live orchestras, go out to see singer-songwriters. They want to see acoustic music, live music. I think there will be that push, but yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I think there was at one point last year during the Broadway season, there was almost 400 musicians employed on Broadway. So you're right. I do think there is a push to have um, more live musicians. I'm not concerned about AI right now. I walked into a Vietnamese restaurant maybe a few months ago with my partner, and we're getting our food, and suddenly I was listening to jazz music, and it wasn't bad, but there was something off. The patterns were all technically correct. Everything sounded like it could all, and I was like, this sounds weird, right? She's like, what are you talking about? Like, this music. Like, yeah, it's it doesn't sound real. The instruments are real. Everything about it is real. I held up my phone, and sure enough, it was like a Spotify thing. I'm like, this is not real. This is not real music. This is it's like, how could you tell? I'm like, because it sounds like robots playing. Like, how could you not tell? So I right today in 2026, I'm not worried about AI replacing real musicians. There's a choral director from overseas who asked like ChatGPT to write a choral hymn or something, and what came out was just like gibberish. Like, yeah, it followed all the rules, but so right now I don't I I'm not worried about it. But as Peter said, I think there might be a pendulum swing the other way where people are like, oh no, there's suddenly a thirst and need for humans because every day this everything is becoming more and more automated, and yeah, I think we're due for a swing the other way. I don't know when it'll happen, but um, seeing people and hearing real humans, I think I don't know what that will be, but yeah, I'm not worried about that right now. It'll be okay.
Live music, human connection.
That's right.
Uh, I think it's something would be difficult to replace in live music. So it's um, thank you so much, Peter, Sarah, John, for your time, your insights, wisdoms, thoughts on so many elements. And there were so many wonderful questions. Thank you to the audience for your time and attention and all of the excellent questions. Um, our next session will be at 12:30 EST. Please note, so this is the career fair working in the music industry. A different Zoom link will be sent to you if you've registered already for the conference. So that will be a different Zoom link than the one you used to access today's. So the career fair will give you an opportunity to meet with leaders um, from Orchestra Canada, Prince George Symphony Orchestra, Sistema Canada, and Long McQuaid. And each of them you'll be able to speak with these individuals directly in breakout rooms to ask them questions about how their organization's working, go back and forth. Um, but that will be sent to you via a different link. And then at 2:15, we have back at this link, the one you used to join this panel, the role of music in the lives of adult amateurs. So how is music making a benefit to those who may not be pursuing this in a professional capacity, but how can it still be very much a complementary element and aspect of their lives and still a way to connect and give back to communities in which they're involved in? And so we hope to see you there. And thanks so much for joining us. And for the remaining schedule, well, for all the sessions, you can check out our website at www.wheremusicleads.com. But thanks again for joining, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.